Well, hey everyone, time for Geocache Talk. Whether you're at work, in the car, wherever you are, we hope you enjoy the show. Please give it a like and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, TuneIn Radio, wherever you can find it. It's on lots of places. Radio Public, Spotify. You can get all the weekly Geocache Talk goodness. Big thanks to the Travel Bugs for the music and our patrons, Demon Hunter 2, Electric Water Boy, Aggie Jedi Master, Antaeus, Joshua, the geocaching vlogger, Nick at Cashley, One Kind Word, Butterfly Girl, Loon Trackers, the Aussie Geocacher, Sodak Zach. Wonder what Sodak Zach's up to tonight. The Deadliest Cachers, Terrell 2, Neil Moore, Team D&D, Geocaching Adam, Peachy 1276, the No Code Geocachers, Curiosity Girl, Tick Magnet, Marsipanic, Bricker John, Firesafe, FS Abero, Geo Rick, Cache Addict Mel, Geocaching Janji, the Geocaching Junkie, Sir Drumalot, Janice, Tricasius, Tom Frey, Rugels, EGK PBR, Casamaya, Master Sergeant USMC, Little Gears, Albedo 0.39, It's Only Barney, Purple Turtles 3, ACDC Family, None of It Tidy, AFK Geocaching, It's, almost wrote Barney again, Josh Boggs, Carrot Killer, Korsgat, Geocaching with Lampe, Bren Tim 07, Dave and Karen of Cache Canada, Team Tailwagger, Black Chrome, Super Nate, The Twonky, Burnt Turtles, Padib, Gazelli, Dragon, Gunter Hunters, Acme Wild Cachers, P0001, ADK Sarah, Eastern Girls, KC, Billy Robson, Fox and the Hound, TX Wolf Totem, K Blast, Landlocked Pirate Fam, Stetuki, Burns Fire, Hockey Zombie, and our new patrons, Ship to Shore, A. Holly S., Geo Dandrew, Direwolf 821, Deuteronomy 31:8, Sasquatch Lover, and Anje Damon. Last one, he's in France, so I had to ask him how to say that, but I think it's Anje Damon. So anyway, my French is not good. If you'd like to become a patron, head on over to patreon.com/geocache talk for more details. Patrons get X tags. They get the cool new blackout coins right there. So we still got some of those. And our geocaching, other geocaching items during the year, as well as bonus content and invites to special events only for patrons. Support levels start at as little as $3 a month. Well, tonight, no co-host. Jesse is not with us tonight. He is traveling right now. So we're just going to jump right into show 114 for September 2nd as we welcome Roger Woods and Michelle to the show. Welcome to Geocache Talk.
Good evening. How are you?
Hi.
Good. So glad to have you guys on, and this will be interesting, I think, for everyone. I found it fascinating to hear and get to hear some cool stories from you guys and talk about I think, a topic that we really need to spend more time as geocachers discussing and make people more aware of what is possible for folks with different abilities. So we'll get right into that in a minute. But first, we're going to do a little bit of news, and you guys obviously are welcome to join in as we talk about the news. First, we're going to talk a little bit about the Geocache Talk stash. Tonight, we're going to release clue number 5-1. So I've got some new loot to show off. I have because we have a lot of it's growing. The treasure is growing up that in the treasure chest, as it were. So, well, wait a minute. What's going on here? Oh, hey, we got Zach. Zach,
Yeah.
What's up? What's up, buddy?
How you doing?
Good. We were just talking about the Geocache Talk stashes, and I've got a coin I'm going to show here in a minute that we've added to the loot. But funny that you're just coming along because
Yeah,
Uh,
I've been growing out my geo stash.
Good. Getting your stash going. Excellent. Uh, Buddy, I don't think
Especially,
it's like that. I think it's stash. Like, never mind. Go ahead. So, how are you guys doing up there in South Dakota?
We're good.
yeah,
Good.
doing all right. Uh, she's
Sweet.
making she's making chicken pot pie, my three favorite things. Uh,
Oh, you're funny.
He's not funny. Don't want to encourage him.
Oh, come on. Yes, he is.
Just
Um,
a little.
just a little. So, yeah, you guys. Uh, of course, the big news was the engagement. I thought that was awesome to hear and to see. You had people who I love the different. Uh, it was chasing the Iron Man. He did the. Did y'all remember seeing the whole? He took your photo and made it into like a little logo thing. That was so
yeah,
cool.
that was awesome. Yeah,
But
so cool. We have the best viewers here, and
we
love,
do.
yeah, love our patrons, love our viewers and listeners.
So, how are the general plans coming for the wedding? Is that coming along?
Yeah, going well. Still trying to figure out how I can host a geocaching event there during the.
She's shaking her
We haven't got
head.
that one through yet.
Right.
Uh,
No, that's funny. Yeah, we don't have to do that at the event.
no, we have a full year. It'll be July 6th of next summer.
Right. Little
So,
planning, but hey, you can't let it go too long, right? You gotta get some of the planning done.
yep. So we got a venue, the date, reception venue, caterer. Uh, we're like 90% of the way on the guest list and everything.
Oh,
like
very
that.
cool.
So we're making pretty good headway.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, good. Well, I was glad to hear the whole, that you know, how the whole thing came about. As neat seeing the posts and the
Yeah.
discussions that were going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not expecting it to be in California. And
Yeah.
I was afraid it was going to be geocache related, but there was none of that on the trip. So,
Yeah.
Oh, no geocaching was discussed or anything.
No,
none of it, actually.
not a single geocache was found or hidden on the entire trip. So,
So that's what
Really?
I'm a man of my word.
Huh? No cache was hidden.
Yep.
When you were in California.
Nothing. Not a single geocache. I promised her.
Okay. Well,
So-
that's interesting.
But what she didn't know was our proposal location was an Earth cache, so I did have a good Earth cache photo.
Oh, well, there you go. See, you kind of snuck in a little geocaching.
I had a
So.
streak I had to keep going.
Right. Well,
So that's
Hey,
how you
she's-
chose that location.
it wasn't. I actually lucked out that one was an Earth cache location, but yeah.
well, cool. Well, that's really, smart of you to. I mean, she knows about your geocaching, so she's
Oh, yeah.
not,
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't mind
So-
too much because it makes me really eager to travel and take her places. So
That's
I'm fine
right.
with that.
Right. Well, that is cool that you picked California.
yeah, it was. I mean, we do actually. So a lot of the reason people might notice I travel quite a bit, and I have in the past, and I've taken some really cool trips. My high school friend group, we all now live all over the U.S. And
Yep.
so every summer we pick a new national park to go to.
Oh, that's a
And-
cool idea.
Yeah, and so we meet up there and we camp out for a week, and so that was sort of, something that we had on our mind, and it was at the same time I was looking for a place to propose, and it's like, can you get much more beautiful than Yosemite? So
Right. Exactly.
I figured that was as good a spot as any, so we just decided to kind of kill two birds, one stone on that trip, and she had a cool backdrop and a fun trip, and then I just kind of enjoyed after the fact just getting to sit around the campfire with my friends and newly
Yeah.
engaged.
Well, that's awesome, Zach. I'm so glad you popped in to talk to us about your trip
yeah,
and your.
I figured she's here with me tonight, and we can just quickly pop on and kind of finally talk about it on the show quickly. And
Yeah.
just, I know a lot of people are asking what I've been up to lately and everything. Well, that's going on. You'll see next week. I've actually been training for my first marathon.
I know, it's awesome.
On social media, I've been pretty quiet because there's a lot of engagement stuff, a lot of training for my marathon. I'm keeping my daily streak alive, and obviously I've popped in and out of this show.
Yeah.
I've been trying to keep that. But once this marathon's done, I think I'll have a little more time for a few other, like at least getting some posts up and some fun stuff this fall. So
Right.
that should be fun. But just wanted to pop in here and let a few people know what's going on, and figured Maggie was here, so you guys could all, if you haven't met her on the show yet, the listeners or the viewers, they could do that. And yeah,
that is awesome. Well, thanks you guys for popping on and talking about your trip.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
Thanks. We'll take care, guys.
Some good outro music.
I am.
Yeah. We'll catch you later.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Let's get into. I was going to show the coin real quick, and we'll kind of get back to the news. So anyway, Chris Mackey, very famous coin designer, provided a coin for the Geocache Talk stash. So I'm going to show that coin now. It's really kind of a really cool coin.
Oh wow!
And I got all the information about it. He goes into a lot of detail about what it's about, and so looking forward to when whoever finds the stash and all the treasure that's in it. I've got an actual thing that Chris wrote up. It comes with a proxy coin, so you don't have to put out your own, which is kind of cool that he provided a proxy. Some people do that where they'll have a coin and you don't want to put the coin out because you'll never see it again. But you can send the proxy as as obviously a proxy. So anyway, and I've got the write-up that he did for that coin as well. So it's really cool. We're adding that to the treasure, to the loot. So anyway, all right, moving on. So something came out a couple days ago, and geocaching.com is putting out a 4-month series. So each month, as you find caches, if you can get your point total sort of accumulate over between September and December, then you can get a souvenir based on their little criteria that they have. It's called "You Might Be a Geocacher If," and so that'll be kind of interesting. Go to geocaching.com and check out the information there about you might be a geocacher if, and so that's out there. So, all right, let's get into the show itself. And with Roger and Michelle, we're going to talk about geocaching with different abilities. So I'm looking forward to this. So Roger and I, I'm trying to remember now, Roger, when there was a note somewhere. I'm trying to remember how this occurred, and I contacted you and said, "Hey, I'd like to have you on the show."
I think it was that I had posted on one of the social media sites
Right.
about Michelle and I out doing it, and how it was kind of cool that I got to sit in the air conditioner while she got to get out and beat the brush looking for these things, and that we try hard to find ones that I can get to, but there's a lot of them that I can't. And
Right.
then I think you contacted me after that and asked me after that post and said, "Hey, kind of tell me a little bit about how this all started." And so,
Right.
so we visited since that time about that.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of start from that. That's a good point in that. Let's tell people kind of how you ended up with your disability, because we talked about it, because I wasn't sure if you'd it was from birth or for whatever, but so if you would tell folks a little bit about how what occurred for you.
Well, mine was Yeah, mine was basically as a traumatic spine injury, I guess, for lack of a better term. But it was
Right.
I took a stupid 5-foot fall backwards off a platform,
Yeah.
landed on my tailbone and crushed 3 vertebrae in my back,
Wow.
and then wound up in a wheelchair. I walked for about 9 years after they did some surgery on it originally, and then the surgery failed, and so I've been in a chair for a little over 20 years now.
Yep.
Still spent 30 years in law enforcement.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your service and that.
About a little over 30 years as a paramedic, and then about 24, 25 years in specialized rescue, and then the last and then teaching as a component of that. And so
Yep.
and then of course my wife is a retired paramedic, so two
Well,
type A personalities cashing in the same vehicle gets a little
Yeah, but I always find them. Well, not always. Most of the time, I find them first. 'Cause I can beat you out of the truck.
Oh, that's not fair, Michelle. You gotta wait for Roger sometimes.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Game's on.
Competitive. Well, thank you both for serving in the way that you have, and so talk a little bit about how you even began geocaching. What was the impetus to get you involved in geocaching?
Well, it was kind of weird because I just ran across something online talking about geocaching, and I called her on the phone and I said, "Hey, what do you think about doing this?" And she's like, "I have no idea what it is." And I said, "Well, basically, you get some coordinates and then you go try to find them."
Right.
And then somewhere around those coordinates, apparently, there's some sort of a there's something that you sign. And she's like, "Well, what do we get out of it?" I said, "Well, we get the excitement of finding the item." And
Right.
so she's like, "Well, I'll give it a shot." And she and I spend a lot of time on the road, but it's always like
a lot more now.
Yeah, but it's always like when you're in the vehicle with your spouse, radio's on, you're not really talking, you're ignoring each other and just trying to get down the highway, and and so it's like maybe this is a way that we while we're doing this traveling, we can do something to add some fun to the trip, and it has. And so that's kind of how we got started. And then it was like when you find the first one, okay, then there's another one right down the road here. We have to check this out, and we just
and then the one you can't find, and you go back 5 times to keep looking, and I still refuse to mark it unfindable. So I will find it.
You're going to find that one. Well, maybe it's not there. Maybe Michelle's not there.
Well, I don't know.
Has anybody else found that one, do you think?
Well, they haven't since we've looked the last times. There was somebody that said that they found it and tucked it back into where they thought it should be. So we're still, I haven't given up yet.
Okay.
But
yeah, that's crazy. Well, and that's cool though that, like you said, Roger, that's something that I think is neat that you guys have gotten involved in the sport. And so, and we're going to talk later tonight about, how to properly do a cache if you're going to make it a terrain 1. We'll talk about that in a minute. But so as we were kind of preparing for the show, there was a couple different caches that you guys have found together that really stuck out. So what are some of your favorite memories so far together? What are some caches that stand out that were good?
Well, the ones that he almost killed me on, because we walkie-talkie, and a lot of times he drives beside me and he's like, "No, look over there. No, it's got to be right there." And I'm like, "Nah, I've already looked."
Well, there was one that really was kind of cool, and it was right after we first got started, and it was in a cemetery in Liberty Hill, and it was one of those that was supposed to be after dark and kind of scary and all of that. By flashlight, find the reflectors, go to this part, find the reflectors with your flashlight, and then move to it. And we happened to be coming through Liberty Hill. It was late in the afternoon, was not nearly dark yet, and as we're driving through the cemetery, I look up and I'm like, "There's an eyeball in that tree."
Right.
And Michelle's
You're
like, what
oh
are you
my.
talking about? And so, and sure enough, that actually was the cache, and we just found it just by driving through. So it's little things like that where you think it's going to be extremely hard, and then it just jumps right out and smacks you in the face.
Yeah, well, he found it before I did, though, and it was on my side of the truck. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then there's been there's just so many. One of them that we found it was in La Mesa, up just about 40 miles south of Lubbock,
right.
and you go to the spot, and it's a really cool spot in La Mesa that everybody knows about, and everybody hangs out, and everybody talks about. And and I guess, because I think I told you this the other day, what is cool about the way we have to do it is that a lot of times I have to sit in the truck, and Michelle gets out and goes and looks. So she's looking right here, focused on one spot, and I'm able to sit back and look at the whole thing.
Right.
And so on this one, she's like, we can't find it. She's going back and forth.
Yeah.
And I just yanked my earbud out. So let me get that. So she keeps going back and forth, and finally I said, no, look at the top of that pole. I think it's at the top of that pole. And sure enough, there it was. But it's both a blessing and a curse, because there's some that I want to do that I know I can't, but also have the luxury of setting back and taking in the whole picture. And I think that's important on all of them. You have any?
I think my favorite one was what was that little town just outside of La Mesa that had the little town all up in the Cactus Alley?
Oh yeah, Cactus Alley.
That one was really cool. We kind of started out, we used to go around and drive around everywhere and take pictures. And I would go into places, take pictures, because he couldn't get in to see them, and then bring them back so he could see. So we've kind of done that until we were kind of tired of that. So that's when we started this. And we kind of do it the same way. We do the walkie-talkies back and forth. And we're total geeks out there. I mean,
that's awesome.
And then we drive past people on the side of the road, and we're like, they're geocaching. Look, they're out looking at their GPS. There's one there. Look, there is. So, but yeah, we spend a lot of time together, a lot of time talking.
That's really awesome. There's a couple of questions in there, but Michelle, do you think that it'd be better to have them inside instead of outside because they're
barking?
Or they're
going like crazy?
Yeah,
I'll take care. I'll take care.
See if they'll settle down. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
so we'll
go ahead.
Yeah, maybe better to have them indoors. Actually, now that we think about it, they might not be as much. So, all right. So a couple questions. So Roger, actually, Tom Brotherman, Electric Water Boy, he's in this thing. He's doesn't live. I guess I don't know how far, Tom, you are from Tao. He's not too far. He's in Selma, so just north of San Antonio. So not too far.
Yeah, no, that's about an hour and a half away from us.
Yeah, not too bad. He wants to know, have you placed any caches yet, or are you just finding caches? Have you become a cache owner yet?
We are trying. We're trying to find the right one, and we're looking at a bunch of caches because there's one that we want to do.
Bunch of areas? You mean areas to hide a cache?
Well, no, we want our first one to be a significant one. Okay. And there's right down the road from us, there is a little rural cemetery out in the middle of nowhere, and there are 6 Texas Rangers. And in fact, there's a father-son that were both Texas Rangers that are buried there. And we're just in driving around and looking at the caches and seeing how people put them together.
Right.
That's what we're trying to come up with. And I know, because we thought about, let's just rush out and put a cache out, but it's like, no, your first one, we feel like we want it to have some meaning and some significance.
Sure.
And so for one out in a little bitty rural cemetery with probably less than 300 people buried in it, to have 6 Texas Rangers buried there, we're just trying to develop the plan now on how to put it up and how to there with maybe the honor that something like that would deserve for what they've done for Texas.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Roger. It's a good idea. A couple more questions people are asking about. and this is something is kind of part of what we're going to talk about here in a minute, but we can kind of talk about it now. One of the questions is from Owen from Kansas City. And his question is, if you use the wheelchair attribute to sort or look for caches. So do you use the wheelchair attribute?
We have, and we do quite a bit, but there's so many of them. And it's like, I think you and I have talked about in the past. There's so many of them. I think that some people don't have don't have a concept of what it's like. And I don't want to say this in a rude way, but what it's like to be in a wheelchair. So some people attach a wheelchair rating to something that's really and truly not wheelchair rated, because ground is kind of hard when you walk on it, but it's not that user friendly for somebody in a wheelchair. And so
exactly.
So we try. I mean, we look at that aspect when we're looking at caches, but it's kind of a false or sometimes a misleading identifier on there, because it's really and truly not wheelchair accessible.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and well, let's go ahead and since he kind of brought it up, let's talk about the terrain rating, because I think that's really a lot of, I think, what folks are wanting to ask somebody about and to hear from you, and this is something that we've talked about, and a couple things that I want to ask you about specifically, and then we'll kind of go through the whole topic. But one thing that I didn't think about before, and I really came to my mind really prominently when we were talking, was just because it's really low to the ground is not necessarily it's almost, if it's on the ground, or it's like 1 inch off the ground, that's not always the best to indicate, is not an indication of anything, because you and I had talked about how your mobility is a little better, of course, than some folks. So let's talk a little bit about how you're able to find stuff a little more. You have a little bit more mobility than some.
Right. And so, so like for me, in the wheelchair world, they're kind of categorized in different levels, like the level of injury. And I'm a very low level. I'm a lumbar level. I have one muscle below my belly. Gives me a lot of upper body mobility. Now you get into the thoracic level, they start to lose their abdominal muscles, so they can't bend over as far. And then, of course, when you get into the cervical or the C levels, because you have C level injuries that still function as a para, even though technically they're a quad. So all of those things have different abilities for getting down lower. And I have two chairs that I use quite a bit, and in one of them I can reach down and reach something that's about 6 inches off the ground, and the other one it's got to be about a foot or a foot and a half off the ground for me to be able to bend over and get it. And so that's one of the things that makes it real difficult when it's like I said, somebody says it's wheelchair rated terrain 1, difficulty 3 or 4. But that the terrain, while it looks flat and all of that, is still not, it's not easy to get across. There's a difference between asphalt and concrete and dirt and grass and gravel. So all of those things come into play. And it's so that answered it. I don't know if that answered it correctly or
that's really good, and that's something that I think that we all really need to think about. And I think that something else we talked about, which is, if you went to the trouble to put a terrain 1, I think what also is helpful, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be helpful, is that and this is something I think you mentioned also, that some cache owners have actually taken a little bit of extra time, and actually in the description they've actually commented that I have taken the extra time and diligence needed to make sure that Now that doesn't guarantee anything,
Right.
but if they go to the trouble to put a note in the description, then you probably feel a little bit more confident.
Right. And there was one that Michelle and I, because I was real excited about it. We were driving up to Lubbock, and about I can't remember the name of the town now. It's about 10 miles south of La Mesa. There was one there, and I was looking at it on the way up, and it says, okay, I think it was a difficulty 3, but it was a terrain 1, wheelchair accessible, and all of that. So we get there, and it's across you have to kind of go through some weeds, down a ditch, and then the cache was on the other side of a rock wall that was about 3.5 feet high, and there was no way to get inside the rock wall. But Michelle was able to just lean over the rock wall and get it. Right. So we get there, I'm all excited about it, and then I get over there, then I can't even get to it. And when we got done, she's like, "Wait a minute, I thought you said this was wheelchair accessible." And I said, "That's what it said in the rating."
Right.
But if you looked at it, you thought somebody in a wheelchair could get this one easy. But you have to kind of just stop and think about. Although, like I said, it just makes it a little easier, to if you think about those things.
Scott mentioned earlier, and I forgot. We got a lot of chat room questions, so we'll get back to our notes in a second, Roger. But he was asking a lot of several questions. So Scott was asking if you drive. Do you drive?
I do. I drive. Yes.
And and I knew you were motorized. Somebody was asking about if you have a motorized.
I do. I use a manual chair probably 90% of the time. I also have a wheel drive chair, and then I have a chair that's made by a company up in Michigan. It's called Track Chair. It's a chair that's got tracks on it. But the thing is, while it makes the track chair makes my ability to go over the terrain awesome. There's not many places that I can't go. It also then limits my ability to be able to reach down and grab stuff because it's so wide and it sits so high that then that takes me to finding stuff that's 2.5 feet or so off the ground.
Right. Yeah, because the like you said, the track one is better if you're going longer distances off terrain.
Right.
But yet it's not really as necessarily as helpful, like you said, for mobility for you, because you have a little bit more ability than like you said, folks that are a little more upright. So one person asked about if Hockey Zombie asked about if you feel like you've inspired any other handicapped people to join the game yet.
I don't know if I have, and we haven't. Michelle and I haven't made any of the big functions yet, which we're planning on doing. This was like somebody catching a catfish that threw that hook out on geocache, and now we're hooked. We're just waiting to be pulled into the boat.
That's right.
But
and Tom, we talked about Geo Woodstock. So Tom is on the committee for Geo Woodstock. So Roger and Michelle are going, right?
Yeah, we've already got it locked in. We've got it on the calendar. We'll be in Fort Worth, and we've actually even got our geocaching coin for that event, the new one.
Oh, sweet.
So we're planning on being there.
Yeah, looking forward. Well, I'm hoping, and it was a good question, Hockey Zombie. What I think my goal is, and I think Roger's goal as well, is that by doing this show and discussing it, I think we can inspire folks who listen to the show. So we have people listen all over the world, and so hopefully we can inspire others who are, that have different abilities, be able to get out maybe and really kind of think through, maybe I can geocache. I've read about it, but maybe there's a way I can get out and actually do some geocaching. So go ahead.
Absolutely. And for me, like I said, it's being out there with somebody, being out there with Michelle, and like I said, working together as a team. And we find a lot of times, and this may sound weird, but working as a team works really, really well because we're not in competition. We're trying to find the same thing. So like I said earlier, I'm looking at the big picture. She's looking up close. And I can sit back, even if I'm not in the truck, even if we're out someplace and she's got to go across a fence or something to get. I go, okay, if I was going to hide a cache here, where would I hide it? And I say, okay, babe, why don't you go over there and look there? Because if that's where I was going to put one, and it works out quite well, and it becomes a lot of fun. And I would really like to make some of these events and meet some people that are in wheelchairs, and see what their takes are on it.
No, that's good. Yeah. And that's, Tom's Tom, I'm going to give you his information later. And so he can get you, Roger, Tom will get in touch with you and get you some more information as well, since we all, he lives very close by and probably could get you, because I think he knows a couple folks that are caching as well, with different abilities. And so Heather asked earlier about what kind of things should cachers look for when placing a cache with wheelchair attributes. So that's a good question. What are some things that what are some other things we should think about that we maybe haven't discussed yet that we would want to keep in mind when we place a cache?
Well, some things that I think about now, like I said, when we're traveling around looking and saying, okay, maybe one of these days this is where we want to hide a cache, and I start looking at it, looking at first and foremost the ground. Is it going to be on a sidewalk? Are you going to have to get off that sidewalk? And there's a lot of things to take in, because a person in a power chair, an electric chair, can go a few more places than a person in a manual chair. And sometimes when we're looking at these on these ratings, I wish I wish it would dial it down a little bit more. Like this is perfect for a manual chair. You're probably going to need a power chair for this, because that's some things to take into consideration. And then not knowing who's coming, looking for that, getting it a little bit higher off the ground is always a good idea. We found one up in Lubbock again when we were up there a few months ago, and it was another one that had a wheelchair rating, but it was underneath a park bench. There's no way I would have ever gotten to that one, because I can't get down low enough to get up underneath there. And we have our tools of the trade, our little mirror and stuff, and I could find it with the mirror, just couldn't get it. So,
oh no!
So it's one of those things. So, it's just in looking and realizing that we have a limited distance, because that chair is a part of us. And so can I get my chair close enough, and then can I reach to it? And I think somebody was talking to us earlier where they talk about sometimes when they're setting one for a wheelchair, they'll take a bucket, set on a bucket with the knees in front of them, and say, okay, can I reach it from this area? Can I reach it from this bucket? And then, okay, based on the terrain, then this is something that a guy in a wheelchair can do. And so that's just something to think about.
Yeah, no, that's Roger. That's good. Yeah, that's before the show, when Zach popped on, as we were sort of prepping for Zach to be on for a couple minutes a while before the show. He did mention to you that that's something, because Zach's working on doing a whole fizzy grid up in the South Dakota area. And so he said that more, and this is kind of fascinating for somebody like Zach who loves to climb railroad trestles, but he said that hiding the T5s was not as hard as hiding the T1s. And so that was his suggestion, was to take a 5-gallon bucket and sit on the 5-gallon bucket and then like you said, try to figure out, can you reach things? Is it, what is reachable? I mean, I think that sometimes that's what I think people, like you're saying, people go, oh, well, I stuck it underneath this park bench. Well, yeah, okay, it's low to the ground, but that doesn't mean it's reachable. I mean, that's not,
right.
So, yeah. So, a couple sites that we wanted to also talk about tonight. And so I'm going to do a screen share, and I'm going to show about a site that we were talking about earlier. It's called Handy Caching, and I found this site. Let me do my screen share first. So, all right, share my screen. Okay, there we go. And so there's this site here. It's called Handy Caching. You seeing it okay, Roger, from your end?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, cool. So this is a fascinating site. At least I find it pretty fascinating, and that is, and you can include these. This is something I think I really hoping people would use more. Is something like this, and that is, you can do very dialed in ratings for a cache, and so you can then, and here down at the bottom, you could do the HTML code, and you could actually add this information to your cache, and that will give you more information. Because if you see, as Roger and I were talking about, here's a really good example. This one here, this cache here, this is a GC7 B7, B as in boy, 7, Roger, as in Roger, and C as in cat. So GC7B7RC. And so this cache has been rated by somebody with all ones. And what they do by that, even though the cache is rated as a 1.5, which doesn't necessarily mean it's wheelchair accessible, but this person that rated it, who went to the cache and said, okay, distance to the cache, well, it's less than 500 feet. So that gives you some more information. Is it a rough surface? They said, no, it's paved, or it's a 1. It's paved, tarmac, or smooth. The slope, I think that's also probably key.
Absolutely.
Right, Rogers?
Absolutely.
Slope. And this one is flat. Then they put obstructions, what I think is really something we tend to forget about, something that Roger and I have talked about, which is obstructions to get to the cache. This person says there are none on this particular cache, and they have a cache height. So they said it was somewhere between 2 to 3 feet above the ground, 60 centimeters to 1 meter. So that gives you a really good idea. And there's several. You can go look at different caches on this site. Here's one that's got a rating 23122. So this person has it as, it's a little bit further. Its route surface is gravel or curbs. It's flat. The route width is less than 3 feet, and then 0 to 3 feet above ground. So this website, I think, is be kind of handy for people to use or to see. And if we could use this information more on caches, I think would be very I think more helpful, or would be something more than just let me stop sharing there. So something more than just, hell, it's a 1. Well, right. Is it really a 1? And I know you've mentioned that you're if it's more than a 1, if it's a 1.5 or whatever, you can look at that cache and sort of maybe make a determination. And I think like we talked about, if cache owners could be more, willing to put more information within the description, I think that would help.
Right. And that would help a whole lot. Like I said, I mean, we love, Michelle's not in here right now. I mean, we love the 5.5s. I mean, we really and truly do. I had her right after we got started climbing up a rocky slope,
right,
to the top of a cliff to get one, because I'm like, go do it. You got to go find it.
Yeah.
But there's some, there's times whenever she's gone all day long getting in and out of the truck, and I haven't been able to get out of the truck one time. And it would be nice to have some that you knew when you got there. If you drove 15 miles down the road to get to a particular cache that you think you can get to, and know for sure that you can get there when you get there, that would be awesome.
Yeah. That's something that there's more questions I don't need to ask you from the chat room, but something we talked about before is gadget caches, or caches that are puzzles, like field type puzzles, where you get to it and it's not necessarily it's not just underneath a lamp skirt or something. I mean, we as cache owners, we need to all think about, let's provide, Roger doesn't want something simple. I mean, we all find simple caches, and we hey, that's nice, we want to find a cache, but he wants to find difficult ones as well, just like all the rest of us. I mean, there's not really, I mean, I think we forget that. We try to do so much on the difficulty side that sometimes we fail to think about everybody who could possibly benefit from this difficulty. There was one that I was telling Roger about that my little group did yesterday. It was a D5 T1. And I thought, and I had this show in my mind because I'm thinking, oh, all right, we're gonna see, is this a true T1? And so Roger, I was thinking the whole time, it's like, okay, Roger gets out of the car. You know, can he get, number one, can he get to close enough to where to ground zero? And I'm thinking, okay, yep, he can do that, knowing what I know. And then I'm thinking, okay, can he actually, once we found it, which took, I was all over the place. That's just me. I'm not the greatest at geocaching, but once the group said, Gary, are you going to find the cache too, or are you going to go wander off into the distance? It's like, oh man. So they'd already found it. So I'm like, dang it. So of course I go over there, and I have a group of guys who can be kind of cruel sometimes, Roger. They had the cache in their hand and they still wanted me to try to find it. And of course I'm like, great. So that's just the way we play sometimes. Right, I'm like, dang it. And they're like, oh, it's right here. Here's the cache. I'm like, oh, I hate you. No, we're having a good time. But I'm like, okay. Well, I said, well, put it, go ahead and put it back, and then let me see where it was, because I want to be able to. And sure enough, where they put it, and it was tricky. But when he put it back, I go, yep, that's one that Roger could get to. And so those are the kind that I think we need to really be thinking about. So Heather also had another question for you, as far as tools of the trade. Roger, do you have some kind of a grabber claw, the thing that you can use? Okay.
Yes, yeah, we have a backpack that we keep in our truck all the time, and it's got one of those expandable mirrors. It's got a grabber. It's got pliers, duct tape, radio batteries, just extra logs, everything under. Every time we find something, we're out and we're like, this would have came in handy when we were trying to find this cache. We grab it and put it in that backpack in the truck, so it's ready to go all the time.
Right. That's awesome. Scott has a couple more questions. Let me throw them your way. Have you ever asked a cache owner for information about the cache, so that because he found the cache but could not? Okay. So he's asking is if you have if you ever had to, or have you ever tried to contact a cache owner and tell him, hey, I found your cache, but I can't grab it. Can you either give me credit for it and I can tell you where it is, or usually, of course, you're with Michelle, I think, Scott, that's the thing, is that if you find it, Michelle, you could say, okay, I found it. You saw it. I've seen it now. Why don't you go ahead and grab it and we'll sign it.
And that's the thing. And I think I told you this first time we talked, Gary, was that when Michelle and I started this, we set up our team together, and we've had an agreement that we will not cache without the other one. No ifs, ands, or buts. And so I always have her with me. And so that makes it that we have not had to do that yet, because on some of the ones that I found, but there was no way that I could get to, I've told her, I said, it's over there, or it's right here, or whatever. And you can come back in here. She's hiding in the distance. She don't want to come back in.
Come on, Michelle. Come on back in.
Come on back in.
We've got questions for you. Come on and join in again.
For you.
Oh, she's taking care of the dogs. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got them in. She'll be fine now. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. She's back.
She's back. I'll put her back on the camera here.
All right. Thanks. So, hey, Michelle. That's something that Roger has said, and I wanted you to kind of to comment on, which is what he just said a second ago, and we talked when we were doing our initial discussion, which is the fact that you guys caching together means a lot to both of you guys, and it really is something that is a way the two of y'all can kind of do something new, something together that is kind of it's fun for both of you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gets us both out, and we see a lot of amazing things that we didn't even know were here, and we both lived in the area for 30 years. And we get to see them together, even, if I'm having to do the footwork. So,
right.
But I mean, it gives us a lot to talk about instead of just sitting there staring at the same four walls.
Right. Yeah, no, and I the stories that Rogers mentioned to me, and is that the it is something that you guys have started down this path, and there's so many I know talking about the same thing with all of us, is getting the extra time to get out and do those together, and just I can sense the excitement from Roger in the fact that it's like, let's go find some more geocaches.
Oh yeah, and then there's the days that we're like, okay, we're done, no more. But there's
just one more.
We'll both put the GPS down, don't look, and then one of us will pick it up and start looking, and you're fixing to stop again, even though you're exhausted, and you're gonna one more. There's always one more.
And it's funny, we were talking one time on a trip, I don't remember where we were coming from, South Texas or somewhere. Anyways, we were driving down the road, and you always see these vehicles pulled over on the side of the road, and you don't see anybody around them, and you're thinking, I wonder what they're doing. They must have stopped and make a potty break or something.
Right.
And the GPS ding that we were getting close. We were within like a mile or something of the geocache. And so we start getting ready, and just as we pull up, there's a vehicle sitting on the side of the road right where there was a cache at. We're like, okay, that's what these people have been doing all this time. They're not taking body breaks. They're out geocaching. And so we had to pass it up. We'll have to go get it another time because we weren't going to find it right after they found it.
Yeah, we turned a 4.5-hour trip that we make so often that it's just a long ride into a 9-hour trip.
Yes.
Wow.
That seemed to go by like that. I mean, it just was, it was done before we knew it. So yeah.
Well, that is so awesome. Okay, so let me take a look here note wise.
One thing, can I say one thing too, though?
Yeah,
because
go for it, Roger.
and there's a lot of them, and we noticed this last time we were in. Again, I keep talking about Lubbock. We were up in Lubbock on business, and there's a gazillion geocaches in Lubbock, and the majority of the ones that are up there are like we were talking about a while ago. All of them, they kind of say, because they're close to a sidewalk or whatever, that they're wheelchair accessible, but there's very few that there are, and it can be, either on height or location or on size, because a lot of people, like myself included, now I've been pushing a wheelchair for almost 20 years, that my hands don't work on grabbing little small things anymore. And so it's just all little things like that. I mean, but it is a lot of fun, and I really enjoy doing it with Michelle. That's what makes it all worthwhile.
Oh yeah, that's nice. Isn't he sweet, Michelle?
Isn't he sweet? It's my DNA that I'm leaving behind and collecting the cactus. Yeah, he's sweet.
That's funny. Yeah. Hey, how was it? Oh, it was terrible. Oh, that's all right. All right, let's move on to the next one. No.
Yeah. It's like, do you not see all the cactus? I need tweezers.
Tweezers. Yeah. Give me a minute, would you?
But I'm ready when we get to the next one, though. So
it's
fun.
Awesome.
It's fun. I mean, it gives us something in common, something to do, something that we can work together, even though he can't get out. He can help, and it'd be better if he could get out.
Yeah.
I'd like to sit in the air conditioning a little bit.
Well, I think you two have a great method that you're doing it. So if it's one that Michelle can scout out, and then it's one that Roger can literally get to, or because you've kind of I think it's really cool how you guys have sort of thought through, let's both go out to this spot, and so Roger can kind of scout it from his perspective. Like you were to mention earlier, Roger, it's like there's a couple times where you'll see something and you're like, oh, I think I know where it is. And you can relay it to her. Michelle can go look for it on top of a, whatever. Or you've got the other perspective, which is she can kind of, if she can figure out where it is, she go, oh, I'll get right. This is when you really can get, and so you can kind of get out, and she can kind of,
Yeah, and then they're the ones he surprises me because we haven't even really figured out where we're going to stop yet, and he's like, "It's right there." I'm like, "How do you know?" Because I see it. It's right there.
It's right there.
Okay,
Eagle eye.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to start to get into the wrap up tonight, but I want to give everybody a chance to kind of give some final thoughts. I'm going to look at the chat room one more time to see if there's any final questions. So, I guess Michelle, I'm gonna start with you. Give us kind of your final thoughts for tonight for your experience so far, and also for the folks out there who are hiding geocaches, especially. What are some things that you'd like to say or want to talk about as sort of final thoughts?
I would just like to see some, and there's a lot to think about when you're hiding geocaches. They're not thinking about, they want to make it difficult. It needs to be a little bit of difficult, to make it worth your time. But I would like to see that there was more than just the light pole hides that he could get to. You know, I mean, but otherwise, I mean, it's amazing. We've worked it out, and it works for us. And we get out, we do it together, and we're pretty hard-headed. We don't give up.
That's good.
And so it works. It works for us. And like I said, it gives us something to talk about. After the second trip we had made out, I told him, I said, you realize we were in the car for 6 hours and never once turned the radio on.
That's awesome.
Never once, was it just you're blindly staring out the windows? You're talking, you're planning, you're strategizing, and pep talking. He tells me, you can find it, you can get it. But yeah, it's done a lot to bring us closer. It's given us something to do that we both can work towards.
That is awesome. Thank you, Michelle. All right. Well, so Roger, I do have one more question for you because the chat room's still going well, and then I'm going to have you then give final thoughts. So, Last question from the chat room, and thanks, chat room. You guys are always rocking it every Sunday, and we always are so grateful, Jesse and I, for you guys being there, asking the cool questions, and also they usually talk with each other, so it's fine too, because that's what the chat room is for. They got their own conversations going. They're not listening to Jesse and I. They want to just talk to each other, which is fine too. But no. Stacy's asked a question about just Chaos in Motion. She's actually also in Texas too, I think. So that's kind of cool. Got a lot of Texas connections tonight. She's asking, is it better for us to put it at a 1.5 if we're not sure, than to, as she put in quotes, get your hopes up with a 1 rating?
No. I think if you take a little bit of time and just look at it, an honest rating is always good, but take into consideration, like I said, is it on pavement? Is it on gravel? That kind of stuff. And I think if you just stop for a second and just think about, as you're making your approach, would I be able to do this if I was setting down? And if you can honestly say no, then rate it higher. But I don't want to take the fun out of people hiding it, and I don't want to take the fun out of people finding them. Like I said, it's just whenever you drive thinking, okay, I've got a 1, and then you drive 10 miles down a road and you get there and find out, no, this really and truly, if you're in a wheelchair, it's a 3 or a 4.
Right.
It's a little disheartening. Like I said, thankfully, I've always got Legs McGee with me, so she can run over there and get it. But she's like, a lot of times, she's like, man, I just wanted to get a drink of water. Now I got to get out of the truck again. So
that's right. But I like your, because you're thinking also about, like you said, you want it to be the proper rating, because not everybody is going to be necessarily all the time in an advent. Not everybody has a Michelle.
Right,
so
absolutely.
So.
And not to cut you off there, but I would tell you what.
No,
because there was one more that we did, and I was just thinking about this one right now. I was going to look it up, but I don't have time. Anyways, it was another one we did in a cemetery, and you got there, and it was. I mean, the dirt was rock hard, and it was rated as a wheelchair one as well. Okay. But the way they had hidden it was down in a hole.
Okay.
Like 8 or 10 inches below the ground. It wasn't a hole that they dug. It was a hole that was there from some animal or something. But it was, I don't want to give too many hints away, but they don't know where it's cemetery.
Yeah. No, we don't know where it is. You can go ahead.
Yeah. So, but the cache was super glued to a rock that was actually like 10 or 12 inches down in this hole. And so we got there, pulled up on it, and it was like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. It's rated as something for somebody in a wheelchair. But Michelle had to get on her hands and knees, and she actually took the rock out 3 or 4 times and kept going, it's not here, put the rock back.
Put the rock back.
I used the rock to help move leaves.
Right. Until she finally, I said, no, keep digging. It's got to be there. And she turned the rock over when she set it on the ground, and I'm like, there it is right there. It's glued to the back of that rock. And then called me a lot of unnice names. So if somebody would feel sorry for me, that would be great.
Don't buy it.
No, that's good. Yeah. So it really kind of, could you could have reached that rock, right? That was used for
No. I couldn't. Like I said, the rock was it was a good 10 or 12 inches underground down in this hole. So
it was way down in there. So, okay.
No way. I mean, like I said, she had to get almost on her belly to reach down and get the rock. But it was rated as a 1, and it was wheelchair accessible, what they said, but there was no way. So, like I said, just think about it. And like I said, I don't want to. It is so much fun. I don't want to change anything, but I want them to, just think, just honestly sit back and think for a minute and say, hey, could I do this setting down?
Right.
And if so, then hide.
Yeah. And I guess, kind of continue the thought, Roger, as I'm going to let you have the final word, continue some, your, final thoughts on the topic, or what also you would want to tell, folks out there.
Well, I would like to see, what I would really like to challenge everybody to do one time is, if you know somebody has abilities different than you do,
right,
to get them involved in this. Take them out just one time. Take somebody out with different abilities one time and let them see, no matter what their ability is, whether it's a mobility impairment or something like that, which is what I have. Take them out and let them try it, because and you may have to go with them. But the benefits that you're going to get from that, the benefits you're going to reap from that time out doing what we do and looking for these caches everywhere, and trying to find trying to find somebody's swag makes it all worthwhile. It's just, we've been doing it less than a year now. We are absolutely, somebody's reeling us in the boat now. We're hooked for life. We enjoy it. We have a lot of fun doing it, but this is something that every member of your family, everybody that you know, can get involved with. A ton of fun doing.
Wow. Yeah. That is a really great way to wrap it up. There's nothing else I can say on that. So I'm just going to jump right into the next shows. So next week we're going to do show 115 is with talk about going caching. We have some folks on. They're going to be from the Going Caching Mega. It's in Georgia, and we got to work that out. So we're going to do that next week. We had to do a little rearranging of shows. That's okay. And then in 2 weeks, the Homa Geo Tour. We're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks. And then in 3 weeks, kind of a special treat, we're going to have Brian Roth on the show. Brian was one of the original folks that started geocaching.com, and it became Groundspeak. So yeah, Brian will be on the show, and we're going to talk about the beginning of the whole thing and how it started. And that'll be fun. It's going to be a neat show. So, well, folks, we hope you enjoyed the show tonight. email us your comments at geocachetalk@gmail.com. If you have questions for Roger, just send it to geocachetalk@gmail.com, and I'll forward it on to him, and we'll get you any answers or information that we can. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Geocache Talk, at Gary Slinkard, one word. On Instagram, Geocache Talk, Jesse, who we don't know where he is in the world right now. Actually, I don't know. He's traveling. But anyway, his is Memphis Mafia, one word. And Facebook.com/Geocache Talk. Show can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, of course, as well as the Geocache Talk website, geocachetalk.com. Don't forget to click on that subscribe button below and ring that little bell so that you can be reminded and you can see and hear the show on a weekly basis. And tell your friends about the show and let them know what we're doing and get them involved. And until next week, don't just talk about geocaching. Go make a proper Terrain 1 cache for folks and go geocaching. Good night, everybody.
Good night.